Hey everybody, my name's Aaron. I'd like to welcome you to the Universal Awakening Project. With me, as always, is my divinely appointed co-host Maria. Maria, how you doing today?
I'm doing really well. I'm excited to be here. Erin, how about you?
Oh man, I am really excited. This is going to be awesome. So this is our second episode. The first one went so well, we decided to do another one, and it's just kind of keeping up with the topics of the day. And we decided to come back and do this. But one thing we decided to do a little different today, that we did last time, is that we're both so grateful for this opportunity. This is an amazing opportunity to be here and to express ourselves and to let spirit kind of flow through us and deliver messages and stuff. So we wanted to start this episode with the gratitude prayer. So I'm going to go ahead and lead that. If you feel called to, close your eyes, just settle in, relax, and let's get going on this. So, God, angels, guides, and ancestors, thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you so much for bringing Maria and I together and helping us to make a good contribution to the ascension of the human consciousness. And we thank you so much for all the people that are here learning with us. And we thank you so much for just bringing us all together. And we ask that you would guide and direct us to deliver a helpful, useful, and if possible, entertaining message to those and just help us to make a really good use of this effort. And so we now turn this over to you and ask for your inspiration and your guidance. And it's all yours now. Amen.
It's a beautiful prayer. Thank you, Erin, for leading us into that.
Absolutely.
Um, just starting in with a meditation or a prayer is a great way to connect with spirit, and I already feel them surrounding me. So I hope we're all divinely inspired to contribute what it is we have to add today. And
Yeah.
so I just wanted to, oh, did you want to say
No,
something,
no, go
Erin?
ahead. Absolutely.
Well, I just wanted us to do a really brief recap of yesterday's last week's session. It was, and for those of you who are new here, this is a podcast about helping people on their spiritual awakening journey. And like Aaron likes to tell me, it's about being the guide to help somebody through who hasn't gone through it and maybe waking up to this for the first time and not knowing where to go. So we're here to help you, to be guides, to help share some of our own experiences and a few of the tidbits that we've learned along the way. And so, if you've tuned into episode one, you will have heard a little bit of our own spiritual awakening journey and who we are, how we got here. So, I encourage you, if you want to learn a little bit more about us, to tune into episode one.
Absolutely. And so, like Maria said in the first episode, we talked sort of about like, the mechanics and of spiritual awakening and basically what that looks like and what it's looked like for us because it's such a personal process for everybody. It's so different for everybody. No two people's spiritual awakenings look the same, but they all kind of lead in very similar directions. It's either to get you to your mission in life, which we all have one, and some people's missions are huge and some people's mission may just to be to smile at one person one time in your life that, changes their day and like, brings them back from the edge or something like that. You never know what your mission is. But we all have one. And what we've noticed and what spirit seems to be telling us is that, it's great that we did the first episode about what a spiritual awakening is, but in this episode, we're kind of exploring where a spiritual awakening goes. It seems that humanity has always had the capacity to get to a spiritual awakening, but as a collective, we haven't been in the octave to go much past that. We've been able to get there and then kind of look around and be like, okay, I'm more awake now. So what? And and it's really it is a legitimate question because I mean, what's the purpose of awakening if really all you're going to be is a little more aware and stuff? And so I think what we're finding is that at this point in time, the human collective's frequency has raised to such a level that we're actually going to be able to go beyond that and actually get into some deeper parts of our missions and actually some spiritual remembrance from our spiritual origins. I mean, we are spiritual beings here having a human experience. We absolutely came here, to learn lessons and walk this path in density and duality and stuff. But now we're kind of evolving past that and stuff. And so what we wanted to do here today is just kind of talk about what that's going to look like. I mean, Maria, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think you're 100% on the mark. It's so difficult to know what to do with your awakening once you have one. And oftentimes the life that you've lived before isn't necessarily aligned with what you've awakened to. And so learning to navigate that path and figuring out what it means for us as an individual, but also as part of a collective is challenging. And it starts at the individual level, but our efforts are collective and they all feed into each other. And so I'm just really excited to get started.
Yep, absolutely. Me too. And so like let's kind of back up just a little bit. Let's back up to before we come here. When we're still in the spiritual form before we incarnate here on Earth. I mean, this is a big deal. This isn't something we do lightly. This is something that we come to this, this planet and into this collective for a very specific reason. And it's, not just random and it's not just to go and, see what it's like. It's to actually like learn lessons and stuff. And so what we do prior to incarnation is we've got a whole team of spiritual advisors, angels, guides, our ancestors, and other people that we're going to encounter in this life that are going to incarnate at the same time as us. And so what we do
Mhm.
is, we kind of all get together and we map all this out and say, I want to learn this, and you're going to come in at this time, and like, we'll have a relationship or whatever, and then blah blah blah, we'll go on from there. And so once we get everything kind of worked out, get all the details worked out, then we make an agreement to incarnate here into a veil of amnesia where we remember none of this. Like, and there's some people that have like a little more access to it, but really, I mean, for all intents and purposes, we come here, and then for the first few years of our life, say from like birth to maybe like maybe 4 or 5 years old, we sort of have kind of contact with our spirit team, but that slowly and steadily diminishes until it kind of goes away once we're able to exist on our own. But during that time, what we do is we kind of make adjustments and we, talk about how things are going and stuff like that. And you'll notice kids usually have like imaginary friends and stuff that they kind of work through things with. That's really, them communicating with their spirit team.
Mhm.
And so, we're in this state of amnesia. And the thing is our society conditions us to stay in that spirit or that state of amnesia. It freaks people out when people like remember, past lives and stuff like that. So anytime when we're kids, we bring any of that up, it's usually like, oh no, that's just your imagination, or that's just, you didn't really see that or hear that and stuff. And so we're really taught to believe that this isn't a part of us. I mean, Maria, what would you add to that?
Oh, I mean, 100%. And I'm fully conscious, having been a skeptic not that far long ago about how crazy this all sounds. And, what's your evidence? What's your proof? What do you mean we have these contracts? And I mean, the evidence for that comes to us from a lot of personal experiences and anecdotes of people who either have remembrances in this life and who can recall it under either hypnosis or channeled messages. And it also comes to us by through people who've had near-death experiences, people who have clinically died, had an experience, a spiritual experience, an encounter with angelic beings or guides or Jesus or Shiva or whoever. It's different for everyone, but they all have common patterns that you see from experience to experience, which really makes you wonder,
Oh,
why is it that from across cultures, across the world, across time, these same experiences occur to these people? And they all often tell of these soul contracts that we write ahead of time, and that there's something called an Akashic record where all of the, the history, the crucial moments of humanity and of your individual self are documented to be accessed before and after. And so it's all in the energy of the universe, and we're part of this energy, and we're contributing to it collectively in our incarnations and before incarnations. So I I, I know it's a little tricky for people to get their minds around, especially if they're just awakening, right? And so you may have had a full blown awakening and you have unity consciousness, either through a chance encounter, near death experience of your own, or maybe you're coming to it slowly and you're coming through it through a growing sense of knowing, a growing clarity in your perspective. So, not to frighten anybody off and say, "Oh my God, this is too much, too fast." It takes some acclimatizing, but the
yeah.
more you get to it, and the more you suspend disbelief and really concentrate on your knowing, the easier and the more intuitive it becomes to you.
No, absolutely. Yeah, it feels very natural. And and you alluded to it, in especially in the 12 step curriculum, if you will. It talks about like there basically being two different kinds of spiritual awakenings. There's the spontaneous ones, or the ones that are the result of like a major event, like like a near death experience or something highly traumatic or something like that, or like something that really causes shakes you to your core and really causes you to like question, all this conditioning that you have. But the vast majority of spiritual awakenings are more of what they refer to as of the educational variety that
Mhm.
are that kind of come on over time as a result of more and more experiences that as we go along, we start to kind of connect the dots and put the pieces together. And I call it the cosmic scavenger hunt. I mean, that's kind of what it is. You kind of like you get to different places and you pick up the clue and stuff and get like, oh yeah, now I see how this works with this. And so I think there's no formula to it at all. And however you come across your spiritual awakening is absolutely correct in how you're supposed to do it. I mean, there's no penalty for not getting it in one action. It's however it works is what's going to work and stuff. And so it there's an old saying about spiritual awakening. It says, before awakening chop wood and haul water, and after awakening
Hmm.
wood and haul water. So it's not so much that after awakening what you do is much different. It's more of your state of being that changes. And really, when your state of being changes, yeah, you like, you still have to survive and you still have to live and stuff. But when your state of being changes, then you start kind of doing some work in the mechanics of the back of all this and really start to undo some of that social conditioning and kind of getting to our core essence. And when we start, kind of having these experiences that make us question our conditioning, we can start to remember the true essence of our existence and kind of start working with that. I mean, what do you think, Maria?
We definitely can start having a remembrance, and either it happens spontaneously, as you said, or we can work through it. And I found that the best way, at least for me in my experience, has been through meditation. And whether you come at it from a religious perspective, an agnostic perspective, or just merely an acknowledgement of a spirit, meditation can get you where you need to go. Excuse me. Meditation takes away all of the unnecessary thoughts, all of the unnecessary judgments, dialogue that occurs in your head. And it really brings you back down to your core essence, who you truly are. And once you start spending time with that being within you that's always been there, but that you've probably ignored for a long time because you're so busy chasing all the squirrels in your mind, uh, then you really do have that remembrance. You realize, oh, yes, this has always been here, and this is who I am. I am the observer of the thoughts. I am the person behind all of this action. I am the will that spurs things on. And so, yeah, you can come to it in a variety of ways, but for me, it's meditation that really brings us to the core. And there are other ways too that you can get through there, either through yoga, which is a practice that I espouse and I teach and I recommend to everybody because it is actually a preparation to meditation. It gets the body primed for it. And so you can do prayer, you can enter a trance mode by singing, by swirling around, doing ecstatic dance, a variety of ways. Uh, Awakening and knowledge of ourselves is built into us. We have all of these mechanisms within the human body that allow us to reach it. We just haven't been taught that we can or that we should. And
Absolutely.
so
Yeah,
over
no,
to you.
I was going to say you make a great point, about the spaciousness that meditation brings, and really kind of being able to detach from our thoughts and our conditioning, and really see that we are the observer, and that's when that remembrance of our true spiritual nature can come through. And another big part that we can do is when we can get that spaciousness inside of ourselves, we can start to heal those traumas that we carry around with us, just from having our human experience. You know, we have experiences in our lives that are traumatic and that hurt or are, it's frightening or whatever they are, just incredibly sorrowful. And those traumas cause us to put up shields and walls that keep other people and other thought forms out. And when we can start to bring those down, when we can start to detach from those traumas, we can start to heal them, and we can start to look at them objectively and say, this happened. I don't like it, but I accept it. You don't have acceptance does not necessarily mean approval, but it's like it's objectively true that this happened, and I can unchain myself from that and I can move on. And what that does is when we can start dropping the weight of these traumas and start getting them out of our psyche and start, kind of moving past them, what it does is it clears up a lot more space. And when we have more space within our psyche and it's not taken up by those painful and traumatic events, we can really start to like get back to our core essence and really start to make more conscious contact with that deeper, timeless, immortal, just unrestrained part of us. And that's kind of what this is all about. So, like I said, throughout history, there's been times in human history where certain people were able to reach this sort of enlightenment, or were able to reach, and really, if you think about it, the word enlightenment means to lighten your load, kind of like, I mean, it's really like just to lighten
Right.
things, and or bring light to it at least. And throughout time there's been people that can do that, but now it's like available to basically everybody. Anybody who is willing to do the work can now move that. And so what do we remember, like, in these remembrances? We first of all, we learn, or we remember that this is really not all that serious. So, this particular facet of existence is not the end all be all of everything. It's like a simulation or a game, but it's a lesson. It's something we come down here to learn. And in that lesson, we have default settings that we can get back to. And those default settings are joy, peace, and love. That is what we're here to recall, to remember. And so when we undo that conditioning, we can actually start to not only experience those states of being, but actually like be those states of being. You can be joy, you can be peace, you can be love. And it's such a deeper experience than just feeling them. What do you think?
I think you're right because we get so caught up with our lived experience, and then we start to associate or identify as our experiences, as our thought. I am sad. I am a victim. I am a worker. I am whoever. And the actual truth of it is there doesn't need to be anything after the words I am.
Just I am.
I am. And that is such a liberating thought in and of itself because it shows you that everything that occurs is transitory. It is something that is occurring through you, it flows through, and then it's over. 10 years from now, the problems you have today, you'll probably have forgotten or they'll be solved
Yep.
by then, right? So what is timeless, what is eternal between that point and now is you. It is your essence. It is your very part that is is it just is,
Yep.
right? And the in Christianity there's the I am that I am. It's something that's been picked up by all spiritual cultures for the longest time. And so the just being and knowing that you are and that you're connected to something that is also the same for someone else, and we're all part of the same eternal source, constantly transforming, but transforming into ourselves more and more and crystallizing and alchemizing, getting rid of those impurities and finding the true essence, the true gold that is within. Um, Once we can accept that, once we can suspend a lot of those criticisms, those judgments, those doubts, those conditions, ideas about what this sounds like, and actually just feel what this sounds like, and you can accept it in your heart, then you found yourself. And it's glimpses at first.
Yep.
And you extend those glimpses over time, and then you get to become those parts of yourself. You start to embody it more and more and more. And truly at the very core, it's peace and love.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like, man, that's what we're here to recover. Life is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be light, and it just seems like we as a species, as societies, have just decided like that's just not going to work. Like, and really a lot of it has to do with like kind of controlling people's behavior and stuff. It's a lot easier to like keep people in line, keep them in check when they're kept in these kind of lower frequency states of being. But really, like it is our birthright to recover love, peace, and joy. And that's what we're here to do. And really, and another thing that we are able to remember in this remembrance is a state as a whole of plurality instead of duality. In duality, it says that I am different from you. Like we are separate beings, like, and I may or may not like you, and I may or may not accept you. But in plurality, we can be separate beings, but we are like two separate beings. We're of sort of the same cloth. We have commonalities. We have places where we meet. We have our own individuality, but we're not differentiated from each other. Does that make sense? It's like we're basically like working as cells in one organism.
Yeah.
And when we can get back to that point, like, we realize that like we are a unity consciousness. I mean, we're just kind of separate and beautiful expressions of it, here and here and here, but we're not at odds with each other. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. And the way I picture it is as source, God, universal consciousness, whatever you want to call it, um, experiencing life,
Yeah.
right? Because it's so expansive and so infinite, it kind of has to fracture itself off into little bits and smaller, more contained forms. And so you can call that a soul or an oversoul or excuse me, whatever architecture you want to use
Mhm.
to explain it. But it sends itself out to experience life and to experience creation. And so each and every one of them may appear to be separate, but they are all originating from the same source.
Yep.
And so it's only the idea of you can't really experience something new if you already know everything.
Mhm.
So you need that forgetting that happens, once you cross over into birth. And so with that forgetting, you become a brand new player. You become brand new. You explore things from a variety of new uh, angles and experiences and life circumstances and physical limitations or gifts or astrological signs and parameters upon which you're born, and you're like a player in a video game playing a new game, experiencing life. Oops, I died, coming back,
Look at
starting again,
that.
different version, right? And so we are all part of this source. We're just experiencing ourselves. And so when you look at it that way, it gives you a lot more compassion for other people going through life. They're also just figuring out life, and they're going through a variety of different circumstances. And hey, we're all trying to beat the game, or at least get to the end of the game and figure out what it is that we've come here to do. And some of us are a little bit more skilled at it than others, and others are just still exploring new skills, or they're living life through an angle that source also wants to discover. So it's life isn't always meant to be about love and light. We have that and we aim for that, but difficult experiences are there to form us.
No, absolutely, yeah.
And so we need those. And source is experiencing difficult experiences. Source has a plan for itself to experience difficult experiences. And so somebody's going to have to play that role, and you may not like this particular person in this lifetime, but they're playing the role that they need to play in this play called life, this theater of life.
Absolutely. And that kind of just leads to the overall point here is, we're not in a vacuum. Like we
Yeah.
are social creatures, we are social souls. And the whole point of this is to, number one, experience it, but number two, be of service to each other, to help each other, like to see, where we can add something to the conversation, where we can show up as ourselves. And that's really the biggest service we can provide for humanity is to show up as ourselves, as our authentic, full, unrestrained selves, because that's what spirit created us for. And so that's one of the most beautiful things of this kind of remembrance that comes after spiritual awakening is you remember like who you really are and that it's okay. Like it's totally safe to be yourself because that's what you should do. There's no greater gift that you can give to another person than the genuine expression of who you are, because that's what it is. We're not meant to be carbon copies of each other. We're not meant to all do and think and say the same things, although society certainly conditioned us to think that way. But now that we're seeing beyond that, it's like, wait a minute, like there's like worlds inside me that I never even looked at, because I was so conditioned not to. And now I feel safe to bring that forward. And really, that's like the biggest gift that we get is that safety and being ourselves and being able to share that with other people. And that's kind of, the really beautiful part about doing something like this is that I was a very closed off, very like narrow kind of gauge person for a really long time and stuff. And finally, like at some point, it was like, wait a minute, there's a whole litany of things inside me that I can share with other people. And it turns out like it's been received really well. So, when we show up as our authentic selves, we show up as the spark of consciousness that the creator, intended us to be, the individual, beautiful soul that we are. It's amazing. Life that used to be so scary and so like constrained and I don't know, stressful and stuff like that opens up and becomes beautiful. And you realize there's absolutely nothing to worry about. This is amazing. This really is. So, so I guess we'll kind of leave the conversation on, the point that like, yeah, spiritual awakening is great, but let's go beyond that. Let's go further. Let's go, all the way down the road. Let's go as far as we can. And like, as a collective, we're able to do that now. So let's embrace it.
I think you've just given the audience a huge gift, which is permission to be themselves and to step away from people pleasing, which is often a safety mechanism. And so that comes from work. It's easy to say, okay, well, be yourself. And I'm like, okay,
Like, what does that
cool. First,
mean?
who am I? And like I've been this person to all the people around me for so long.
Yep.
How do I suddenly become somebody else? I'm going to experience a whole lot of backlash. I might lose partners. I might lose friends. I might lose a business relationship. I might lose a job. I might lose my grip on reality sometimes. Sometimes we need other people to tell us who we are. And we've been so stuck in that mode of just accepting who others have told us to be for so long that if we're not who they expect me to be, then who am I? And that work of finding yourself and rediscovering yourself and letting your inner child, because I often think our inner child knows exactly who we need to be. I kind of akin that to our soul. Because when we're 3 years old, when we're 4 years old, we are who we are. We are like the purest expression of self.
Yep.
And so I treasure children for that because you can't tell them who to be. Like they will be who they are at any point in time and they might fight you about it, but they know who they are. And over time, we form them. We tell them to sit down at the table and we tell them to stop, fidgeting. And you tell them to, that's not a proper question. That's not polite. That's not this. That's not, well, get your head out of the cloud. So all this to say, the freedom to find yourself and to express yourself is a gift that you're giving somebody, but it also takes the work. And that will come through things like therapy. It'll come through things like shadow work. It'll come through things like slowly finding a community that gives you the space to be who you are. And so we're hoping to build a community like that over here. And we've unmasked, and so we're hoping that you'll join us in unmasking and letting your freak flag fly if you want, or your 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 spiritual selves, your true essences shine through because it's wonderful and it feels amazing.
Yep, absolutely. And we're all, individual, beautiful souls. We're all on our own journey. And, remember that everybody else is on their journey too. And like, let's have compassion. Sometimes it's hard or it's easy to forget that everybody's, going through all this and stuff like that. So let's treat each other really well. So for those who want to stick around, we're going to do a guided meditation. That'll be a separate video to this. So if you'd like to join us, we're going to do that about, kind of getting a little further down this remembrance road. But if if you don't have time or you don't, and that's not your thing, that's cool. No worries about that. You can always join us next time on our next episode. And, if you resonated with this video, awesome. Like give us a subscribe, give us a like, drop us a comment, tell us what's going on in your journey. And if you don't resonate with it, that's cool too. We could be friends in some other facet of life. Not, everybody's at a different place, and there might be another light worker out there who gives you the message in the frequency that you're going to understand it or that you'll resonate with. So no worries at all. Anyway, we thank you all so much for joining us today. We thank you for being with us and being part of our awakening and our ascension. And we're so excited to do this, and we'll see you next time.
Take care. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.